Hey, what's up? It's the Bober Handley Pro Football Podcast. It's Nick Handley, and today we got a special guest. It's actually Kansas City Chiefs coach Andy Reid, as you see right there. Also, Chris Bober.
How
Maybe
about those Chiefs?
you even got the color on the mustache, the
Yep, I
vibe.
got the face shield. I got the Super Bowl ring. If I stand up,
Wow.
I got the Andy Reid figure.
Yes, I
Right?
love it. That's you. You really pulled that off well. That's very good.
A little gray in the mustache here too.
I know
Right.
that's excellent. So, is this going to be an all-day thing, all weekend thing for you, or
Well,
what?
probably through tomorrow.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'll wear it for the game, but see how Andy Reid fits on me. So I guess
You have
I'll
high school football tonight too.
we got high school football tonight, which will be awesome.
So,
Pretty excited about that. And bring some light in here.
so is Austin's teammates going to think that like Andy Reid is actually in the stands, like scouting some of the Elkhorn players?
Yeah, that's, if I got to find a Hawaiian shirt to wear underneath it. Good stuff, but you're back, man. We took
I'm back.
a
Yes,
little guest last week, took a hiatus, and come out. Now you're a daddy. How's it going?
it's going well. As you know, being a proud parent of two, the sleep thing, I always feel like that's the first thing people ask. And I think when they ask, they already know the answer to that question. If you're getting sleep, it's like, you know the answer. And no, not the sleep that we're used to, but no, if you're going to be woke up in the middle of the night, is there a better way to be woke up in the middle of the night than to see your little guy there? So, I mean, yeah, it's been a lot.
It's still like the honeymoon period for you.
Well, yeah.
Oh, it's so great, and everything smells great, and yeah, you'll see. It does get better though. Once you get to the point where you stop wiping asses, at that point, life gets pretty good. Then they get to be teenagers, and it's a different kind of cleanup. But that's awesome, man. I'm glad to hear you guys are doing well, and getting at least a little bit of sleep.
And thank you and your wife for the care package. That was awesome. And so we really appreciate that. Everybody's been just so cool about it too, because I think they realize that is amazing as it is. It's a life adjustment. I've already been crapped on twice. We've been puked on a few times, peed on. So I mean, in a matter of 2 weeks, I feel like I've been initiated. So here we go.
Yep, it's good. It's good real life training. Real life training. So, all right, man. Let's get back to our podcast. We love to talk about some NFL stuff. One of the big things that came up in my mind, and this is kind of a reaction, but I'd love to get your thoughts on it too, is you watched the game last night where Carolina actually, even though they were favored, they end up losing that game. Atlanta runs the ball, comes out with a good win. That's kind of the Atlanta we expected. But the big news of last night's game is, of course, the hit on Teddy Bridgewater. Right. So their DN Harris hits him, and he got kind of kicked and tripped. That was the first penalty.
Yeah.
Then he goes down, he kind of rolls over awkwardly, and Harris just like crumples him, and he hits him right in the side of the neck. You can tell it kind of bended awkwardly, and deserving of a penalty. Probably did not need to hit a quarterback while he's going down like that. But my big thing is now they're talking this morning that he's going to get suspended. And I want to know what's the difference between that and the severity of John Bostic's hit on Andy Dalton last week. When a quarterback's giving himself up, he's trying to go down. It's not like it's Lamar Jackson trying to be a threat running the ball. I mean, what do you think? I think they're trying to catch up because they probably should have suspended both of them.
Yeah, the John Bostic one I think is interesting too, because if you go back to even when he was a rookie and he was with Chicago, he had some pretty. I mean, he's a guy who plays very aggressively. He's got some violent hits, and this is something that they liked about him when he came out of Florida. So I go back to that whole reputation that some of these players have, and we've seen that in the league for a very long time, to where they did start to really look at individual players and assess additional fines or even additional suspensions based on your reputation. If you're a guy that does not have that type of MO, then you're typically going to get a little bit more of a lenient punishment. Now, in the game itself, that's what's always interesting, because if you warrant an ejection, you always think that there's going to be some type of league review. And maybe I would say if you get ejected, especially if it's early in the game, then you're probably going to be subject to a fine, but maybe no further suspensions. So the Bostic one with Dalton, I thought was probably worthy of that type of treatment, because he is a guy that does have this reputation of playing aggressive. Now, I don't know, I don't have it in front of me how many times that he is been given a personal foul, helmet to helmet, if he's ever been significantly fined. But I mean, he's a guy that does play a little bit on the edge a bit. Now, and I'm not trying to compare him to like a Vontaze Burfict or anybody like that. So I was surprised by that one. I really was. Now, last night, kind of the way you described that, I felt that that was, again, another situation where, okay, I hear you. You're going to be strict on this one. And we know that we're protecting the quarterbacks. That's just how football is being played these days. But this is where the NFL doesn't always put itself in the best position, where you can use a recent example like the Dalton hit last weekend, and then you can use last night's hit, and you can say, well, one was treated differently, although one either looked just as bad, if not worse, yet that one's not being treated as severely. And I'm sure there's a lot of teams, there's organizations, and even players for these teams asking the question, well, why? What's the big difference? And honestly, I don't know if there's a great answer for that.
Yeah, I can tell you as a player, having been fined and things like that, I think the player's hardest part is the inconsistency of it, right? And back when we were playing, the NFL had this mandate on leg whips, right? So you go to cut a guy and you kind of overshoot him, so your legs kind of fly up and you hit him with your legs. Well, it's called a
Yeah.
leg whip, and it is a lot of times it's not done intentionally, but you just kind of roll into it and you get it. And it was weird is like the NFL would fine guys for like a few weeks, then they just stop it. Right. There's no consistency to their discipline. And I know it's not an easy thing to do. And this is a topic that we've talked about for quite some time, but maybe to give up some control of that, I think would be in the best interest of the league to have it a little bit more standardized. It's just showing up again to where basically the commissioner, Troy Vincent, the people who are running this, it's kind of at their discretion rather than maybe a little bit more organized or just standard. So, it's not a huge deal right now. I just know that this could turn into something where players, all you want to know is like, give us the rules, then
Yeah.
we'll choose to follow them or not. But if we don't know what the rule is and what line we can go up to and not cross, that's the hard part.
Well, and let me ask you this one too, because I feel like, especially as a player, you see this happen in real time. You've been in those conversations when officials are getting together and, your guys are trying to figure out, especially as an offensive lineman, you're trying to protect your quarterback from those types of situations. And when you played, there was the emphasis on player safety with the quarterback, but not to the level that we've seen in the last 5 years. So my question is, if you do see something like that and you see that this is happening and they have the ability now to slow it down, to review it, and to look at exactly what happened, do you feel that it is pretty easy to sort of dole out intent, or, okay, this was just a brutal hit, this was just something that was avoidable, and it seemed like the player was trying to get a shot in on a quarterback, as opposed to, we've seen so many times where a quarterback pulls up right at the last moment, your momentum's already going there, and it can look way worse than what the intention probably even was, just because the quarterback at the very last moment pulls up, and all of a sudden you are trying to almost protect yourself from injury. So you just kind of finish your motion, your natural body motion, and you just so happen to make contact with the quarterback. Now, is that going to get a flag every time? Sure. But we've seen several occasions over the last few years where guys have actually missed some game time or been fined heavily for something that, quite frankly, I don't even know if they could have avoided.
Yeah, I think they just need to define it more. Now, I personally feel that quarterbacks going into their slides, they should be left alone. And I think that quarterbacks are protected, and they're trying to basically determine on a case by case basis where if you defined it and say if the quarterback has started his slide and you touch him at all, it's a penalty. Then they'd at least know what it is. You know what I mean? So it's a tough position, and I think just the league needs to do a better job of giving them exact rules so that they can either choose to follow them or not.
Yeah, and the other thing is when you think of guys like Lamar Jackson, I mean, even Pat Mahomes sometimes too, but I mean, quarterbacks that can tuck it, they can run. We've seen at times quarterbacks sort of using the system to their advantage, where they sort of get and engage with a defender. They're kind of near the sideline, and the defender just assumes, okay, he's going to slide or he's going to step out. So I'm going to give myself up because I don't want to get penalized. And all of a sudden, at the last moment, the quarterback makes another football move and heads up field. And all of a sudden you miss the tackle. You look like the idiot who wasn't trying on the play. In reality, you were just trying to avoid a penalty. So I do not envy defensive players when it comes to engaging quarterbacks in the open field, because you assume they're going to slide, so you try to lay off. But if they decide at the last moment to head upfield, all of a sudden you just got beat too. So it's not easy.
And again, the hardest part about this, it was Andy Dalton, who isn't a runner. So,
Right. Very true.
that's where you don't even get close to him. I like taking my full paycheck home. I think these guys would too. So,
Yeah.
just give them the rules and go from there. Now, we can touch real quick on the COVID cases that are coming. League's been kind of good, but and we've seen the last couple of weeks. The Raiders had it last week. You've seen it with other teams where like a position group gets sent home. The Giants have their whole line sent home this week because Hernandez tested positive. Now, I understand that today they had no positive tests. If they get one more tomorrow, they're going to be fine. But I got to give kudos to the league for doing the best they can. I think the Raiders got hurt by that last week. They did get their guys back, but they didn't get to practice. And I think it showed up in the game. So we still continue to go through that. Not a lot to go over there. The one thing I want to talk about and get your opinion real quick is we get to see Tua. It's Tua time.
Yeah.
And that's going to be a big debut, and we'll definitely get into that game. But to see, just another young quarterback added to this league, and we're talking about hits on quarterbacks. And one of the reasons this is becoming such a big deal is because it's you either have or do not have a quarterback that can move, and there's more and more of them. So we're going to see more of these kind of situations come up, I think.
The Tua Tagovailoa announcement last week too was interesting because it made sense to do that during the bye week. But how many times have we seen this move made when you've got either the journeyman quarterback like a Ryan Fitzpatrick or just a quarterback in there that's going to kind of hold things together until the time is right for the young rookie quarterback to make his debut? How many times, though, have we seen that move made because the current starter, the journeyman, the veteran, whoever they have in there is just struggling? And the offense is not doing anything. You're not winning games. So the move is just natural. It makes sense from both an organizational standpoint, but also from an optics standpoint. You can't really say that with the Dolphins. Look, I think we know what Ryan Fitzpatrick is. He's going to give you some good games, but he's also going to deliver some duds. There's a reason that he's bounced all over the league and never really was able to stick anywhere because he's been very inconsistent. It is interesting, though, that he's been coming off of a heater and that they're making this change. But when you think about it and kind of get more in the depths of it, the organization knows that Ryan Fitzpatrick is not the future of the organization, but Tua Tagovailoa is having a chance to watch Ryan Fitzpatrick play some winning football, play good the Fitz magic, play the way that, we've seen him play before, and which I think is very beneficial for Tua Tagovailoa. Because if you're watching your starting quarterback and he's struggling, I don't know how much these rookies are learning from that. So when I think of it from that standpoint, and then you have the luxury of the bye week to say, okay, now we are going to move away from this guy, regardless of how good he's playing, and move into our franchise quarterback, Tua Tagovailoa. I think that is a move that on the surface maybe didn't make as much sense because Fitz wasn't playing terrible. But I think given the fact that he was playing good, Tagovailoa is able to process that. And now you have extra prep time for his debut and it rolled out. It does make a little bit more sense when you kind of get into the weeds of it.
Yeah, and we're about to see it. We're about to see it whether it is or not. I think what they might want to do, and sometimes when I see quarterbacks that get thrown into the mix, I think they want to give them a long enough sample so that they have an idea of where they are, right? So if you put them in the last 2 or 3 games, well, that's not a great sample size to understand, is this the next guy? How can we build around him?
Yeah.
But if you put him in for, half a season or a little bit more, you can feel confident that you have a true characterization of him. And then you kind of know his skill set and know how to move going forward. And I think Brian Flores down there is hoping that he's the coach that gets to take him into next year. So they do have a chance in that division too. The Bills lost 2 in a row. The Patriots are kind of a mess. So they got a shot. Maybe they said, let's do it. Let's go for this.
How about this, though? Your debut is going to be against Aaron Donald and Jalen Ramsey.
They do, but when are you gonna have an easy debut? I mean, unless you have the Jets. Well, they do have the Jets in their schedule twice.
They got the Cardinals the following week. Now the Cardinals are a better team, but their defense is not the Rams. But I understand because it's coming off the bye week. I get it, but it's just kind of unfortunate. Hey, here's the team you play after the bye. It's the Rams. They happen to have the best defensive linemen in the entire league.
Yeah, well, You just gotta go. You gotta go do it because you're gonna get one of those every week.
Yeah, you
All
are.
right, man.
You're right.
What now I didn't I stayed up to watch a good amount of the game last night, and it was kind of boring because it was a little rainy, right? It was kind of sloppy. Guys were falling down. But Carolina pulls out the win. Atlanta pulls
Atlanta.
out the win.
Yeah.
And that's the Atlanta team I think we thought we'd see all year long. You saw Gurley and Hill combined for over 100 yards. Matt
Mhm.
Ryan ran for a touchdown, very efficient. Ridley did well. Julio Jones. They shut down Carolina. And going into this game, Carolina's young defense just was so beat up front. They lost their line short. They lost a lot of
Yeah,
guys up
Jalen
front.
Short.
So if finally, when you're coming off a team that's kind of rebuilding, when you start getting some injuries, you don't have the depth figured out yet because Matt Rule's just there. I don't think he did anything wrong last night. I think he just was a victim of, his team ain't quite ready to win a lot of games this year.
Yeah, and it's funny you say this is the Falcons team I think we thought we might see early on in the season. I think this is the Carolina Panthers team that we thought we might see early on in the season too, because Carolina was kind of surprising all of us. We're like, well, if this is a team that could be in they feel they have Teddy Bridgewater as their guy, but they could be in one of those first 3 or 4 draft picks of the first round. They weren't playing like it. They were winning football games. They seemed to have a really good culture there. And I don't think, the last couple of weeks and them losing games, it all of a sudden says that Matt Rule doesn't have a good culture there. I think he's doing a good job there, and I think they are building something there. But what I would say is what you saw last night, to your point, is, yeah, that was more of the Atlanta team that I think people wanted to see if you're an Atlanta Falcons team, that they could be a little bit more gritty at times. They could play a little bit better defense, and then they could lean on their veteran quarterback like Matt Ryan, use that great core of wide receivers between Ridley and Julio Jones. But also on the Panthers side of it, a lot of mistakes. Offense was very inefficient. The one thing we know about Teddy Bridgewater, and we know his story is fantastic, coming from that horrific leg injury. But the thing about Teddy Bridgewater has been, and I still don't think that he has really put himself squarely in that conversation of this guy is more than a game manager. I think you've seen that at times in replacing Drew Brees last year when Drew Brees got hurt. He was able to make some plays. I think this year he's been able to make some plays. But do we know without any hesitation that Teddy Bridgewater is more than a game manager? And I thought last night, again, sort of showed there is still some inabilities there, to be that complete quarterback, to be anything more than a game manager. So, yeah, I think it was a little bit more of, this is more like it with Atlanta. But unfortunately for Carolina, this is probably more like it for Carolina too.
Yeah, and these teams are kind of at the bottom of the barrel here, but they're fighting for kind of how they're going to set themselves up for next year.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, and kind of looking at the Sunday slate of games too, there are a lot of interesting ones when we kind of look at this. And you mentioned the Raiders, and they were kind of dealing with some of the COVID. I feel like everybody's kind of had some sort of a bout with COVID, but Raiders and the Browns game, I think we have seen. I mean, the Vegas Raiders, they were able to beat the Chiefs. They have looked like they could be one of the better teams in the AFC on certain weeks. And I mentioned this, I think, in the last podcast that we had. For the Raiders, it's hard to trust them. And like I know I felt like I've said that about the team that they're about to play, the Cleveland Browns. When Cleveland last year was being crowned as the preseason champions and they won the offseason and they're going to be amazing, they were still the Cleveland Browns, meaning you could still not trust them. And they played like that last year. This year, they have, I think, started to turn the corner a little bit where you can trust the Browns a little bit more now. And they're going to have to do things out without Odell Beckham Jr., which is big. But if you noticed, Chris, that when Odell Beckham Jr. went out of that game, Baker Mayfield became a better quarterback. And that sounds crazy because you have one of the best weapons in all of the NFL that is no longer in the game. But I think it forced Baker Mayfield to find the field a lot more, to look more throughout his progressions and not to just rely on having a guy like Odell Beckham Jr., even though his targets are kind of up and down. I think you just knew that you don't have that luxury anymore. So that has to sharpen your senses a little bit. And I was impressed with the way Baker responded because it was a horrific start, but then all of a sudden he just got on fire. So for a team that I think we, at least myself, didn't really trust, it's crazy to say that I trust the Browns more than I trust the Raiders in this matchup.
And I agree with you. I was very impressed with the bounce back that Baker Mayfield had last week. He was hurting. He got hit a bunch, and he came back and played a really good football game. And I think we've kind of defined what Baker Mayfield is right now. Is the teams that he's kind of at par with or better than, he's going to do really well. And they struggle against the good teams. And so I think this weekend Cleveland is actually favored by 2.5 to 3 points. I think I'm not picking them as my best bet, but I trust Cleveland more than Las Vegas right now. Vegas is just inconsistent, right?
Yeah.
They're also coming off about COVID, some other things. I think they got to put them in a position to say, okay, I need to see them be good more than 1 week in a row, right? Put 2 games together before you come and say,
the
they're up
talent's there. They've shown it. The talent is there. They can beat the very best. They did that with the Chiefs, but you got to see that every week.
They are. So I think Cleveland's a better pickup here. I don't know if I'd bet them, but I would like them better. Give us laying some points there. I like Cleveland. Yeah.
I was more excited about this next matchup, the Bills Patriots, than what I've now seen as of late, because, and this is not, I'm not worried about the Bills. Look, everybody kind of goes through a time during the season. I still think the Bills have a lot of positives with this team, and I still think that they can be right there at the end, possibly even playing for an AFC championship. I think they can be that good. Now, the Patriots, I think we're starting to see, Chris, first of all, think about all the opt-outs that they had before the season. You've had the COVID situation with Cam. Cam's now regressing pretty significantly, what we've seen since he's come back from COVID, which is unfortunate because maybe his health isn't completely there. But I think you're starting to see a little bit of that wear and tear on just a depleted roster, a roster that's been kind of pieced together. So 3 weeks ago, I could not be more excited about this matchup. This weekend, it kind of leaves me flat based on how both teams are playing. Again, I'm not that worried about the Bills, and I would lean on the Bills this weekend because I think they're the one that shows the most promise. But even they're not playing as good as they were. Which I mean, when we saw the way the Patriots were playing and the Bills were playing, this thing was going to be just a monster of a matchup. Now, I don't know how great of a football game this is going to be.
Yeah, I like the Bills. This is the Bills at I got them at -3 to -4. I'll take them. I'll take them as my best bet this week, honestly. I think the Bills were a victim of some very hard scheduling, right? You think about it, they had to play didn't they play a Tuesday night? Then they come back
Play
and
the
play
Titans on a Tuesday night. Yep.
a Monday night, and then so they had 3 games in a very short period.
Mm-hmm.
They are who they are, right? But New England is who they are too. And I think Buffalo is finally getting kind of caught up. They're going to get some guys a little bit healthier, a regular week. And I got them at -4. I would take Buffalo. I would definitely bet Buffalo. I think they're going to win by a touchdown or more. I don't think New England's that good. I think New England is reeling, and Belichick can pull out all the stops he wants. He don't have the pieces to put on the board. His little chess game, those guys all opted out or are hurt. The guy he's using is Cam Newton. I mean, Cam Newton is a momentum quarterback, right? If things are going great, this guy is awesome. But when they're bad or they're behind, he's not there. And they've lost a lot of guys. It's not the same kind of team. And I think Buffalo's poised to have a really, really good game.
So if that's your best bet, I'll throw you my best bet. And this is a game that I'm finally saying, okay, Vikings, I tried to hold on as long as I could to say, I like what you do. I like your coach, and I do. I like Zimmer, but you can see the direction they're going now. They're starting to get rid of guys. They're starting to shop guys around the trade deadline. I think the Vikings are probably going to lose even maybe 1 or 2 more. This is an organization that they had so high expectations going into the year, and they've just kind of been smacked in the face with reality that apparently they're not as good as they thought they would be. And the Tannehill Hunter news that he's, done with the season-ending surgery, their defense got gutted in the offseason, just with free agency and then with some key injuries. So I get why they are not performing at a high level. I like the way the Packers are playing. It's hard not to. And so Green Bay, what I've seen is 6.5 at home in this one. Not that matters all that much during COVID, but the Packers, laying 6.5 against a Vikings team that is just rapidly heading the other direction. I think the Packers easily cover 6.5. I love Green Bay in this matchup.
I think it's a great pick. I do. That line was at 7 and it went down under 7. Anything under 7 in my mind with the Packers at home against a team like this, there's so much money is going over on that side. 78% of the money is over on the Packers side. Which is amazingly that it went down a little bit. But yeah, great matchup. I think you're absolutely right there in picking that one.
Now, I don't know if either one of us are taking this as our underdog of the week, but if you look around this week of NFL games, you're going to see a 19.5 point spread. And that is your Kansas City Chiefs taking on the New York Jets. Jets are awful. They're the worst team in the NFL. 19.5 is a lot of points. I mean, this is like a college spread. And so I'm not taking the Jets. I'm not going to take that bait because if the Chiefs are even playing, I'd say 75% on Sunday, they should be able to cover that still because that's how bad the Jets are. But that's an eye-opening number. It really is. The kind of the scary thing about it is it's probably the right number though.
Yeah, it's hard to lay that many points. You don't have to get into too much of how good the Chiefs are versus how bad the Jets are. But the interesting thing is the Jets actually covered the spread last week for the first time all year
Yeah.
long, leaving only the Dallas Cowboys at 0-6 against the spread. Many of the people out there that are bettors think that that was the one time the Jets will be covering the spread this year. They don't expect it to happen this time. That line actually opened up at 21.5. At that, 21.5 might be worth laying those points.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter. The Jets, who knows what you're going to get with them? And quite honestly, it's almost like you want to watch it, but it's too hard to even look away. It's so bad,
Was there a game ball in a Jets Chief that might have been given to this Andy Reid looking guy over here?
Yeah. In 2005, man, we were season opener was against the Jets, and I actually wasn't starting, but Willie Rowe pulled a hamstring and a tackle, so they threw me in there. And at that point, I was like a 6 or 7 year veteran, and I'm like, I got this, and I had a really good game. So I ended up getting offensive player of the game from Dick Vermeil. It was really cool. It was the only time in my whole career I was the offensive player of the game. So it was fun. I told everyone's like, yeah, that's awesome. I'm like, that's week 1. I got nowhere to go but down. But it was cool. It was kind of a little fun memory, I guess you could say.
So Jets Chiefs always will have a special place in your heart.
Well, actually, kind of. I didn't even remember that until somewhere on Twitter, they posted a review. I'm like, hey, I'm in the game. So they don't play very often, obviously.
A game that we probably don't spend a lot of time on. I am interested in this one, though, is Colts Lions because, the Lions don't look now. They are 500. I think Matt Patricia is all wrong for this organization. But when you got a veteran quarterback like Matthew Stafford, when you've got some weapons offensively like a Galladay, I still like Kerryon Johnson. I think there's some things that the Lions have. At the very least, I think they can put some points on a good Colts defense. Colts sitting there at 4-2. Look, their offense is extremely streaky, but their defense, this is clearly an identity that we know the Colts have right now. This game, though, I think is interesting. Indianapolis is a 3-point favorite. I would not be surprised if it's right around that. If the Colts do win this football game, I do not, for whatever reason, see the Colts blowing out the Lions.
No, I think more than likely that the Colts are going to come back and win against the Lions because that's what they do. But yeah, I think they've handicapped this one right. 2.5 to 3 points is good. Yeah, Stafford, DeAndre Swift's have been doing good. Galladay's coming back and doing some good things. And Indy is just solid on defense. So not a lot to say about that one. I'd stay away from it. I think it's too close to call.
Bengals, Titans. Titans are laying 6 on the road against Cincinnati, and it's kind of the same story, different week for the Bengals. You love what you're getting out of Joe Burrow. The kid is taking shot after shots, but he's putting his team in the best position he can for them to win. They're just not winning games, and they're just not there yet. The Titans, it's a physical team. It's a good defensive team. I really like Tennessee in this one. I think they cover. But I every time we talk about a Bengals game, I always say, hey, you know what? Just keep Joe Burrow healthy because I think he is having a heck of a start to his career.
Yeah, and again, not a super interesting game, but Joe Burrow, who loves to backdoor cover, that's why I'd stay away from that kind of point spread. But the kids can sling it, man. I think they got something they can build around. If they can get some protection around him, I think he would flourish in this league, and he'll be a great one for a long time to come if he can stay healthy.
Rams Dolphins. We mentioned Tua Tagovailoa getting his start, the debut. The career begins this weekend for the exciting lefty out of Alabama. And I mentioned having to do that against a stout defense led by Aaron Donald up front is not going to be easy. But here's the one thing I'll throw at you, Bober, because you know this better than I do. Having to prepare for a lefty everybody always says, it's not that big of a deal. But when your defense is aggressive, especially that front seven, and outstanding secondary, or at least Jalen Ramsey, one of the better corners in the league, having a lefty and trying to figure out tendencies that just are not on film right now in the NFL, I'm curious if that does sort of keep the Rams defense on their heels just a bit more so than maybe if Fitz was starting.
Somewhat. I've heard that defenses are the ones who kind of are at a disadvantage here more than the offense, right? Right and left isn't a huge deal as far as when you know where everything's going, but to see it in person, which is going to be what the Rams see for the first time this Sunday, is going to be, I think, a little difficult for them. A lot of money coming in on Miami. Interestingly enough, it's a pick for a lot of gamblers out there are picking Miami, and it isn't just because of Tua, which is why I won't, certainty of that is not why I'd pick them as an underdog. But they're basically saying the Rams are on, I think it's their fourth trip to the East Coast in 8 weeks, right? So they have been on the road a lot. They also say they're coming off a short week, right? And they could play Monday night, didn't they? And they got to come all the way across the country and have to play down in Miami where it's hot, where it's cold everywhere else. It's hot down there. It's set up to let Miami succeed. I just don't know if Tua is going to be the one to get him there. But there's a lot of money going over to Miami side just because of the matchup. We don't know the Tua matchup, but everything else points to Miami having a little bit of an advantage here, even though the Rams have been, they're trying to find some consistency. I think the Rams win this game. I honestly do. But Miami covering this might be a decent way to go.
Are you ready for my upset pick?
Go.
It's the last game we're going to mention in the noon games. Steelers-Ravens. I'm believing in the Steelers because they're doing it with defense. Now, were they lucky to win last week? Absolutely they were. But this is a team that I think, again, when you have a defense that is for real and you're going up against an offense that is dynamic, especially the quarterback like Lamar Jackson, who can hurt you so badly with his feet, it's the defenses that can make him one-dimensional that I think are successful. I truly feel the Steelers had the defense to do that. Last I saw was the Steelers are a 4-point underdog. I'm going to take them and getting the 4 points because I think offensively there's the experience factor with Ben Roethlisberger. Juju Smith-Schuster is a good running back or good wide receiver. Connors is a good running back. You've got enough there, but I think it's the defense for the Steelers that is going to be the difference in this one. And even if they don't win this game, I think they're going to be right there within a point or two. So I'm going to go ahead and roll with the Steelers on this one. I think they might actually win this game. In fact, I'll say right now, I'm taking the Steelers to win this game.
Well, I think it's a good pick. The interesting thing to watch in this game is where Baltimore's been struggling this year as opposed to last year is they're getting themselves into positions where they're not good. Right. So they're not really good when they know they have to throw the ball. And because Lamar Jackson is really struggling throwing it deep, he's also struggling at throwing outside the numbers. He's just not very good at that. He's a running back that can throw in a lot of ways. And as you've seen them kind of come through a resurgence since they got beat up by the Chiefs, what they've been doing is they've been throwing on early downs to Mark Andrews and the tight ends in the middle. And they need to do that because they really want to establish the run. That's their identity. But a team like Pittsburgh can definitely take away the run. So you should see Lamar Jackson try to complete some early throws on early downs early in the game to get the ball rolling. They also, I think, want to run him more, right? I mean, him sitting in the pocket is kind of wasting his ability. So let's see if Baltimore can turn this tide. There are a lot of people who really feel like Baltimore is still the better team. They're uncertain about the Pittsburgh offense. The eye test or last week when they allowed Tennessee to come back and Roethlisberger turned the ball over twice. If he didn't do that, then I think this would be like an even line. But there's still doubts about the consistency and the decision-making on that side of it. And they feel like Baltimore is the more talented team. So this will be a monster matchup. When you look at how these teams are going forward, and this is why I like the Chiefs staying ahead of everyone else because they're playing in a much weaker division than the AFC North, right? So Baltimore, Pittsburgh, and Cleveland all have to play each other twice. So they're all going to beat each other up, which is going to knock them down as far as seeds go. And the Chiefs got to play the Broncos, the Raiders, and the Chargers. So good teams in the NFC North, but their record and their seeding is going to be affected as they go through, unless someone figures out how to win all of them, which I don't think will happen.
The afternoon games, there are some really good ones, actually. We'll start with one that's not probably the sexiest one. That's the Chargers Broncos. Gosh, I think this one was a Charger favorite. I'm not seeing the line currently.
Chargers are favored 3.5. I mean, can you believe the? I mean, I love Justin Herbert. I mean, you talk about a franchise to build around, but other than him, they are just average at best
Yeah.
everywhere, except for maybe up front defensively. But guys are in and out with injuries, and it's amazing to think that the Chargers are favored. I mean, there's a lot of people who are really high on Denver in this game. You know, Denver did not play the Chiefs that bad last week. They turned the ball over. They can do some things if Locke can just not throw interceptions. They actually have a decent team. I mean, I like Denver as an underdog in this one,
Yeah.
3.5. I do. I don't think the Chargers are that good.
A game, well, first of all, the Steelers Ravens game could have been a good Sunday night game. I think this next one, the Niners Seahawks, could have been a Sunday night game, but the Niners Seahawks, another afternoon game. Seattle laying 3 at home against the Niners. Hey, the Niners have woken up. They look good. They're playing good football. They're playing, I think they finally got past what was just a very sort of wicked rash of injuries that they had early on. Garoppolo's kind of settled back down. I think you're starting to see this team sort of play with a little bit more swagger, realizing that, hey, they're the defending NFC champions, and you're seeing some of those elements from a year ago. Seattle, they're coming off of a loss now too, so Seattle is probably hungry. And this is kind of what you were just talking about, the AFC North. This is what the NFC West is. There are just good teams everywhere in that division. Everybody from the Rams, the Seahawks, the Niners, and even the Cardinals. Everybody's improved. Everybody's good. So this is going to be another one of those sort of those back and forth matchups in that division. And honestly, I like the way the Niners are playing right now. I wouldn't be shocked if the Niners pull this one off.
Yeah, and the line opened here at 6. So if you could have got this bet anywhere above 3, I think the Niners are a great pick. At 3, it's a little tougher just because of the number. But yeah, I think the Seahawks are kind of being found out. They're not very good on defense. Offensively, they're not that great either, except for they have Russell Wilson, right? And Russell Wilson makes all things go. So
And DK Metcalf, he can catch anybody.
well, who was
Run
the other
anybody
guy?
down.
Who was the other guy last week? Had a really good game for them. I can't remember his name right now, but it's all Russell Wilson driven. It really is. Chris Carson got hurt. You know, the Seahawks, in a lot of ways, with Russell Wilson saves them a lot. So the Niners are very well put together, but they have a lot of injuries too. I don't even know who they're going to run at running back. But
Yeah.
this could be a good game. That could have been a better Sunday night game. But the last one in the afternoon we didn't go over is your Bears, right? The Bears kind of got exposed last week a little bit. The worst version of the Bears, that is what we saw. I mean, a lot of people expected it, think that's who they are, but a team with very little consistency on offense, just did not play very well. Defense didn't do great. They did okay, but not great. But the offense didn't support them well. Now they're going to get up against New Orleans. They are giving up 4.5 points. New Orleans is favored by 4.5 points as of now, and we'll see what happens here. It's in Chicago, which I think helps. I think there's going to be some weather.
It's gonna be a windy day. It's gonna be a
But
windy
New
day.
Orleans, quite honestly, I feel better about New Orleans running the ball and doing the short game than Chicago, because
Yeah.
Chicago hasn't been able to run the ball. They got no rushing. I mean, they're like 3 yards a carry for the last 5 games. So it's
Yeah.
kind of a game in my mind, honestly.
The offensive line play for Chicago has been horrible. And I think when you saw early in the season, they were trying to make a concerted effort to run the football. But you can only do that as long as you're starting to get more than 2.4 yards a carry, which I think is what Chicago is. Anything offensively for Chicago is near the bottom of the league. And it's unfortunate because they have a legitimate, title contending defense. And that defense just got worn down against the Rams at the very end because they're on the field for so long. Never had good field position for the offense. It was just, I was talking to you about this before we started recording. I've been very critical about Mitch Trubisky in the last couple of years. I'm not convinced now that it was just Mitchell Trubisky. I think the offensive line play, Ryan Pace's inability to address that in the offseason, I think is hurting this team. I think Matt Nagy's stubbornness as a play caller is also hurting this team. I just don't know if he's putting his guys in the best position to succeed. And that includes Nick Foles now as his quarterback. So the offense, I get the feeling they are heading in the wrong direction. When you cannot average more than 17 points in an offensive driven league, that's going to be really tough. And my biggest concern right now as a Bears fan is at what point does that team and Matt Nagy, they start to lose a little bit of that trust in their head coach, especially the defense, because the defense is doing everything they can to keep this team in position to win games. And they're still 5-2. But if they're going to win this game against New Orleans, it's going to have to be an ugly 17-13 type game. And I think the Bears defensively are up to it. But as you pointed out, if it comes down to who can run the ball better, that's no question. The Saints can run the ball better because the Bears' rushing offense is non-existent right now.
Yeah, and I think that the other thing to look at here from a betting angle is the forecast is for a very cold, blustery, windy day.
Yep.
Right now, the over-under is, let's see, 47. I don't know if it changed here. It's down to 43.5. Yeah, see, they're adjusting to that. Man, if you could have got that early, I would have took that 47 as an under.
Yeah.
It could be, like you said, a 17-20 game. That with that line moving, I don't think I'd bet it. If it was 47 still, it changed literally since yesterday for the forecast. So that's going to be a sloppy game. The Bears could do it, but at the end of the day, we'll see what Alvin Kamara and some of the guys on the New Orleans side could do too. Now we get into the primetime games, right? Dallas, Philadelphia.
They're awesome too. They're amazing.
Well, okay, let's go through one really fast. It's all basically the NFC East.
Yeah.
Dallas, Philadelphia. It's so hard to know what's going on. I mean, Ben DiNuccio is going to start. I don't know how.
Love that name, by the way.
I don't mind the name. It's just,
you gotta have does he own a pizza joint somewhere? I mean,
I think he has a slice.
Come on.
He's going for a slice and
yeah.
But again, I don't know. Philly's favored by a lot now. It's like 9.5. I don't know. There's no interest in this game really, in my mind. I mean, I'd like to see how Carson Wentz does, but I couldn't pick those points. I don't know.
There's nothing I get from this game because I think Philadelphia needs to win. They should win. If they don't win this game, then I think it's more indicative of what Philadelphia isn't. The Cowboys they're done for. Now having Dalton going through concussion protocol, having Dak Prescott out, this team is just, they are completely losing any shred of confidence that they had, even when they were losing close games and their offense was putting up good numbers. Now, all of a sudden, their offense is taking a step back because of these injuries. The defense has not been able to stop anybody. So Dallas, they're just a bad football team right now. And that's unfortunate because they have a talented roster. It's just not playing out that way. For Philadelphia, I think this is a show me game. If you are a legitimate playoff team, and they probably will because they're playing in the worst division in all of the NFL. If they are a legitimate playoff team that could possibly do something, it's games like this that they have to show that. They cannot play down on that level. If they do not win this game by more than, say, 4 or 5 points, then I think that is concerning for Philadelphia because there's no excuse for Philadelphia to lose this football game.
Yeah, and let's watch the momentum of Mike McCarthy, right? It's going against him right now.
Yeah.
There's some people who don't think he's going to make it through the season. So I don't know how I feel about that because it's been a weird year. He hasn't been able to get to his team, but it's a sinking ship and he might go down with it. All right, last game we got here. We got my Giants. And here's the deal. The line now is 12.5, I think I see. I am taking the Giants for my underdog this week. Not to win, but to cover. Now, here's why. Tampa Bay is who a lot of people predicted them to be. They have literally played 2 perfect games, right? 0 turnovers. Tom Brady's thrown a bunch of touchdowns. Every single thing has gone their way, and deservedly so. They are primed for a letdown on the road against the Giants. And I'm not saying they lose to the Giants, but 12.5 points. I'll take this game, then win them by a touchdown or 8 points, but not 12.5. I think Tampa will have a good game. I think they'll get comfortable and they'll just kind of cruise. And I think at the end, the Giants will make a comeback, and it'll be short, but I think they'll make a comeback and do some things. Now, my caveat on this one is, I'd like to pick them for my underdog this week. I'd rather. The hard part is I don't know if they are going to be with or without their O-line.
Yeah.
Right. If their O-line can't.
That's a big deal.
It really is. I'm either taking the Giants or Denver as my underdog of the week. Course this weekend. My best bet is Buffalo. I think Buffalo wins by 4+ over New England.
Yeah, my best bet, I'm taking Green Bay to cover the 6.5 against the Vikings. And then my upset pick that I'm taking, I've got, was it one of the afternoon games? Yes. I got the Steelers winning outright against the Ravens, but I'll take the 4 points.
Give you the points.
Yeah, if you're going to give me 4 points, I'll take the 4 points. That way I can protect myself if they win a close game. So, yeah, that's where I'm at on that. Real quickly on Tampa Bay Giants, Danny Dimes, if he stays on his feet in the open field, if that happens, maybe it's a good night. for the Giants, but
Well, it's so farther than any quarterback for the Giants has ever run. But yes, I mean they got something to build out there. I'm excited about this Giants team, honestly. Not necessarily this year. I'm excited about what they have going forward. I like Judge. I like Danny. I like a lot of what they're doing out there.
Saquon will be back.
I don't think Gettleman will survive though. I think they're going to go a
Yeah.
different direction. They'll go with Judge, and they're going to build young, and they should be competitive because they're competitive now. They just can't finish.
Yeah.
It's because they don't have guys, right? Give them some protection, give them some weapons, and the Giants might be a force to take over this NFC least at some point.
Andy Reid, it's always good to talk to you, my friend. That was great. It looks so good. Look at it. The great mustache. That's I think the nice touch to it. I mean, the visor was great and everything, but this is a little gray in the mustache. It really brings it all together.
I feel very distinguished now, and
Yeah.
here's what I can promise you is when you see me on the next podcast, that everything will be clean now. So
I know, getting ready for November.
It served its purpose.
Yeah.
The mustache
You get
for
a lot of
6
food,
months.
a lot of food particles in there and stuff.
Yeah, it's I don't know what's gonna come out, but it's gonna be gone. My wife should be happy.
Bober, have a great Halloween, great weekend. Look forward to talking to you here next week.
Yeah, let's look for a great weekend of football. Bye-bye.